Hi, everybody. Welcome to another exciting edition of Fantasy Sports Review. And before I get started, it's going to be a little special guest, Steve Riddell here, getting ready to do our fantasy baseball show. You know, we did one last season, but now we're going to start bringing it back towards the summertime because, you know, it is summertime, and your boys did win a World Series, so we had to have you back, Steve. I guess you're good luck because we did speak about this last summer, about how the San Francisco Giants and their top three guys, and they really led them to the postseason. And you told me, you know, good pitching beats good hitting any day. So there you go, San Francisco. Hats off. Steve Riddell was there from the start. He told me as a little kid he was stoked to see the Giants beat the Dodgers and go to the World Series.
All the time.
Now they actually won it, so it's been fantastic. But again, we're going to start rolling on Fantasy Sports Review to do some baseball to get you started. Hopefully we get the NFL back. But in the meantime, let's talk fantasy baseball. And Steve, I'd like to tell you about my team. I'm in a 16-team league. A little bit different than last year. I was in a 14-team league, so the draft strategy was a little bit different. I had the fifth pick. I took Troy Tulowitzki, the shortstop of the Colorado Rockies. He's got 11 home runs. He's pacing my offense. Like I said, I'm 5-2 atop my division. But before we get started, let's talk about your team, Steve.
Well, I drafted a team called A-Rod's Popcorn.
Okay.
And I have this habit on my fantasy teams of putting sexy pictures in the little, you know how you have a little block that you can put like an icon or something? So I always use Grace Potter's legs or Liz Phair's legs. Well, I found a picture of Liz Phair sitting on the hood of a car with her legs askew and white panties and her hand down there. They cut my Yahoo site completely. They would not let me check in. I couldn't re-up it, and I had to redo a whole new site. So I'll start my football leagues over, but I lose all my trophies.
Oh, no, that's horrible.
Thanks to Liz Phair. It's a good picture. Check it out.
Well, that does sound disappointing. So I guess you drafted or didn't even get to draft a team.
I drafted one. I had the Gonzalez boys.
Okay.
And I ended up having A-Rod, and I had Buck at catcher, and I had Lincecum, and you know I had some pitching, but. The pitchers I had haven't done Jack Spratt. I'll tell you that right now.
All right, well, we'll get into those guys later. We'll also get into some surprises. But some of the guys that have really been doing well early on, hitting-wise, I mean, you got the New York Yankees who are getting older, but still, you got Curtis Granderson hitting 17 home runs.
Where did he come from?
I don't know.
That's right. He hit another one last night, didn't he?
He's got 17 now. He's pacing that offense. An offense that, if you look at it from top to bottom, all a bunch of veterans.
Right.
You have Jorge Posada crying about batting ninth. Then they're going to run him out of town. But then you also have guys like Alex Rodriguez, Derek Jeter, who were drafted high that haven't really panned out. But you got Curtis Granderson, who you could have gotten in like the 10th, maybe 11th round in my 16-team league, and he's powering their offense with 17 home runs. So this guy, I mean, you talk about diamonds in the rough. We know what he was capable of, and he's really stepped up.
Think if he was hitting more than 260, too.
Yeah, you're right. And then another outfielder that we want to talk about in that same division is Jose Bautista for the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, what more can you say? He's got 19 home runs, Steve. He's going to hit. You think he can hit 50 with no roids in him? Well, you know what? He hit 55 or 54 last year.
That's true. That's true.
If you look at his slugging statistics, he's slugging over 1,000, 1320. His on base is over 500.
OPS, his slugging is 827.
Or 827. His OPS is above 1,300. I mean, for a guy who you thought last season was a fluke, an absolute fluke.
Right.
He's really taken off, and he's also pacing that Toronto Blue Jays lineup. I mean, they're one game above 500 in a division that they said they couldn't really compete in.
Yeah, if you look at all these in these divisions which we've got, they're close. I mean, there are so many teams in it. I wouldn't want to be in the American League Central, but all these teams, just one player getting hot has been able to lead them. I mean, Bautista's a big prime example.
And another guy who was really high on the draft boards coming from the West Coast to the East Coast was Adrian Gonzalez, first baseman of the Boston Red Sox, who has kind of caught fire in the last few weeks, but he started off very slow, as did their $100 million man, Carl Crawford. So that lineup hopefully will benefit from that slow start and hopefully, find some distance to try to keep that heavy Rays and Yankees at bay.
Weren't they having a little trouble pitching too at the beginning?
Well, you know what? John Lester kind of wasn't the same. Clay Buchholz and Dice K were getting lit up for 5-6 runs a game. Right. But then you look at Josh Beckett, another one of their future innings, Hall of Famer, stud. I don't know what you want to call this guy. He's unbelievable. Pitched horribly last year.
Right.
I had him on my fantasy team. I got him in like the 7th round as a reach. I thought this guy was going to do really well. He had about a 7 ERA at one point. It really kind of ballooned, and then towards September, kind of found his rhythm again, got his groove back. But before that, I was too late. I was already out of it. But this season, pitching very, very well.
Those are the players, too. When you take a guy one year and he sucks, the next year you stay away from him. Even if he's available in the 15th round, you're like, no.
and that's one of the guys, Steve, we were talking about that you could sell kind of high because you drafted him. You probably got Beckett in like the 12th, the 3rd, or 10th, or 11th, or 12th round because he wasn't one of the top 40 pitchers available on draft day just because of last season. So you could have gotten great value out of a trade, even though Beckett's been doing so well. But still, he's still highly regarded in the fantasy world because he gives you a lot of strikeouts, puts his team in the line to win most of the time. So Beckett, one of those guys who had an awful season last year but didn't transition to this season.
Let's see if you keep rolling.
And then I think that, and also, we want to talk about some of the other better players in the Central. You said the Central is one of those divisions that's been really tough. The Cleveland Indians, off to a very surprising 30-15
They'll
start.
choke. They'll choke.
Well,
They'll choke.
Usually time will tell, but, Steve, if we do the show next month and there's still 15 games above 500, I'm going to say I told you so.
Okay.
So being 30-15, some of their hot guys has been the middle infielders, Drupal Cabrera. He's hitting over 300. He's got, I think, double-digit home runs. More guys that are pacing that offense. I mean, you look at Grady Sizemore, who's back.
I know. I had him.
Right. Yeah, and you just said stay away from this guy.
But he had a couple slow weeks. Wasn't he on the DL the first couple weeks?
He was, and then he came back and he had his very first at bat of the season, hit a home run, and he's kind of continued that. Now he's still been a little gimpy. He's getting back to form, but. Here's another guy you could have gotten in the 14th, 15th round because you just did not know what to expect from him.
Or later.
Exactly.
Those people with big injuries, you've got to play it safe.
Right, and then also in the division, you look at some of the teams like the Minnesota Twins and the Chicago White Sox. If you had drafted, Justin Morneau, who had a fantastic first half of the season, tanked in the second half because of a concussion. He's been just playing horribly. The 2009 MVP has not been true to form this season.
What about Mauer too?
And Mauer as well.
Out.
He's still injured. And those two guys, that they pace their offense. Now they're looking for offense in Denard Span. You're looking at offensive Jim Thome. And these guys, they're not capable of really leading their teams like a Mauer or Morneau. So the double M's haven't really been there for the Minnesota Twins. And that's the reason why they're in last place.
You look at Liriano too. Here's another guy that they thought was going to be a breakout pitcher. Another guy that I drafted. And he threw the worst no-hitter, I guess everybody says it's happened, when he walked 6 and had runners. But hey, a no-hitter's a no-hitter. But he hasn't won.
No,
he hasn't been able to put anything up.
After getting that no-hitter, he hasn't won a game. His ERA is above 5. So again, really, the Minnesota Twins have been a very, very underachieving team, and you look at their 15-31 record, you're saying, what's the deal? They should fire Rod Gardenhire. No, it's the players that just aren't performing.
Right. And I actually traded Liriano to get A-Rod so that my A-Rod's popcorn could have A-Rod. And I thought it was a pretty darn good deal. Straight up. I don't know why A-Rod started off hot.
He did.
He's kind of tempered a little bit. And, of course, I think Jeter's feeling pressure from trying to get to 3,000 hits. He's within 30, 25, somewhere like that.
You're right, yeah. And then, again, you look at Derek Jeter, just a guy that, fantasy, he always gets above 400 points a season. This season's going to be kind of tough for him because, like you said, he's impressing a little bit. He only has 6 extra base hits on the season, and I believe 5 came in 2 games. So if that's any inclination of how consistent he's been, he really hasn't been consistent.
He and Posada can share the 8-9 slot in the order.
So I think if you put Jeter in the 8th or 9th spot, I think there's be a little rumbling and grumbling there.
Plus, didn't he just get a little bit of bucks in the offseason?
And you know what? That's the other thing, too. He gets this big contract. A well-deserved contract.
Yes.
But a contract, nevertheless, that you look at a guy his position, his fielding, his consistency playing shortstop has gone down. His consistency at the plate has gone down. So is he really worth $15 million a year? No. But the money that they can make off Derek Jeter in the long run will eventually pay off because he will get 3,000 hits as a Yankee.
Right.
So they wanted to keep him around.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I think the Yankees this season, I know they're in first place with the Rays on their heels and the Red Sox on their heels.
Shoot, Toronto and Baltimore aren't that far back.
And you know what? I'm a Baltimore fan, and I've had such high expectations for a couple guys, Derek Lee and Mark Reynolds, to really get their career back on track, and they really haven't done so. Reynolds batting 190, not even above the Mendoza line.
Check those two pitchers out there.
Well, you know what? I've always been high on their pitching staff. You got Jake Arrieta, 24-year-old righty. You have Zach Britton, who's on my team. I got him in the 18th round. Lefty, 23-year-old rookie. Didn't really know what to expect. A high strikeout, low walk guy, so he's going to give you some points. But again, Baltimore's pitching staff has really kind of carried them.
That's typical of a draft, too. If your team's Baltimore and they got some guy that may come under the radar, you tend to draft him.
Oh, yeah. And then and out in the AL West, last but not least, you look at two teams, and specifically the Texas Rangers and the Los Angeles Angels. Texas Rangers, their pitching has been outstanding, lights out. C.J. Wilson has led a great core of guys. Then you got a guy in Los Angeles that we think is going to be the runner, or could be the eventual Cy Young this season, Jared Weaver.
Well, he started that way.
Well, what happened?
Well, didn't you say he just tanked 4 in a row? Because wasn't he 6-0?
He started out 6-0 with a 1.5 or 1.4 illustrious earned run average. And then ever since that, it's ballooned to blossomed to 2.35. And he's now 6-4, so he's lost his last 4 starts. Right. But the hitting and the timely hitting the Los Angeles Angels have gotten, especially with Alberto Calespo, you can play any one of those infield spots on your fantasy team. He's definitely a guy to track. I think he's going to be like a Martin Prado type guy for the Atlanta Braves. So you look at him to target, maybe in a trade, getting him. He's very consistent this year. Meister is Turris, another shortstop that's been playing well. Because shortstop in the American League has been very thin this season. I mean, you look at guys like Derek Jeter, who's always been up top there. But then you also look at Jason Bartlett's now gone from Tampa Bay. You got Escobar who's tearing it up in Toronto, and Baltimore's got a good little young player in J.J. Hardy who's got very nice pops at shortstop.
He's had a good year.
But yeah, switching gears a little bit, we do talk about the American League West, and one guy who does not deserve enough credit is Trevor Cahill of the Oakland Athletics. And why do we say that? Well, Steve, he's 6-1.
Yeah, Lincecum beat him the other night. Threw a 3-hitter.
Yeah, we'll get to the San Francisco Giants.
Don't worry, we're not going to win it again.
But what are some of the surprises you've seen in the American League? Just right off the top of your head.
Well, team-wise, I think overall in baseball, I've been surprised at how tight the divisions are, and that division always is tight. But I think seeing Seattle hang in there, because they're always a piece of trash anyway. You always take it. But yet they haven't had their big boy pitch him well. The Cy Young winner.
Felix Hernandez has not pitched well. Yeah. He's been outperformed by another guy on their staff, Michael Pineda, who we've also targeted. He's 6-2 with a 2.16 earned run average. Really getting it done. I mean, it looks like the King Felix of 2010.
Yeah,
Cy Young winner.
But they surprised me because I always figure them for a perennial last place club. And again, like I told you too, the Birds doing it with a young lineup.
Right.
Doing it with some guys that we can all pick up next year too high.
Exactly. Well, hopefully not too high. We'll hopefully lead you to the promised land for next season's draft. But anyways, it's all about now. I mean, now let's switch gears to the National League. What are some of the surprises you've seen so far?
The Giants are still in it with no hitting, virtually none. A lot of times I think this year the good pitchers haven't had the big wins. And as I look at my baseball team that I root for, Kane's got 3 wins. Lincecum, did he finally get himself to 4 or 5?
Well, Lincecum had 2 unbelievable starts in the last 2 games. Yeah. And I think one was a no decision, one was a winner.
Yeah, I know Lincecum throws 8 innings, gives up 1 run, and gets out of it with no decision.
Exactly. So that was kind of tough. But we're talking about the San Francisco Giants. Some of the hitters that you talked about, Buster Posey, really has not done. He's kind of that sophomore jinx, sophomore slump that we talk about in fantasy football on our show, Fantasy Sports Review.
Panda's had a better year when he lost some weight.
But he's still teetering on the 272.
But
he's not the guy we saw in 2008.
But he'll never will be. I mean, that's called a career year, and that's what he had. Let's face it. He may waddle like Tony Gwynn, but he can't hit like him.
But they are getting it done defensively and pitching. Again, and talking about some of the other guys, Buster Posey was a guy that really high on my list that I drafted. in the second round. Coming
You draft a catcher that high?
Well, the catchers were going quick. McCann was going. Maurer was off the board. It was one of those things where I didn't want to get stuck with like a
Joe
Buck. Yeah, and he's been having a great year.
Yeah.
Or Matt Wieters in the 10th or 11th round, who hasn't been doing so well,
Right.
so badly. But Buster Posey, a lot of strikeouts. A guy that hits for power, only has I think 3 or 4 home runs in the season. Batting on the 4-hole, hasn't been doing that well. So a guy you kind of want to stay away from those second-year guys that had hot first-year starts because there's not a lot of Evan Longorias out there.
Well, the other thing too is we're in the National League West. San Diego tanking. Now, of course, they got rid of they lost Gonzalez. They haven't had their pitching come back up to the level it should have been. They've got no bullpen. And I'm surprised they're down there and Arizona's back up.
Well, I'm surprised only because you talk about the huge loss, Adrian Gonzalez, at the middle of your lineup. He's been replaced by Brad Hopp, who's having a terrible season. And then they just got Ryan Ludwig from St. Louis Cardinals, who is also batting 200, and he only has 3 home runs. Yeah. So that production, that drop-off after trading Gonzalez, just basically giving him away to the Red Sox, they got some prospects for him.
Well, you think Pujols is happier to have Berkman hitting behind him? Or?
You know what? Yeah, and that's another thing. We talk about surprises. Lance Berkman leading the majors or second in RBIs in the major leagues, but also doing it well with his glove. He had a couple of nice catches last night against San Diego Padres, but Berkman's just been one of those guys, kind of not having an out-of-body experience because he's seen it before in Houston, but kind of a resurgence.
Right, because the last couple of years he's tailed off a little with age. I don't know how old he is, but he's taking
the numbers.
Those
numbers don't lie. He's pretty well protected with having Pujols and Colby Rasmus, who's a guy who leads the major leagues in walks. So that lineup with Matt Holliday, one of the most dangerous lineups in. Not even the National League, but in the whole entire major leagues.
Well, if Pujols would start hitting, they're still in first. That's the killer, though. If he hits, they're going to walk away with that division. I think when
you talk about Albert Pujols, you're still talking about one of the best hitters in baseball. You can't really take away from any. Yeah, you can't really.
10 years. In 10 years, this is the guy's 11th year.
Unbelievable.
Extrapolate his stats out from 10 years over 20, if you could. He'd pass Bonds.
I think so too.
It's not going to happen, but
it's just one of those things where he's in a contract. He's pressing a little bit. He's on a contract year.
Think he'll stay?
Well, I think he will now because he hasn't been doing as well. You look at his stats now compared to last season. You're like, is this the same guy capable of making $300 million a year? I think he's got that pressure on him to
300 for 10 years.
It's 30 a year. Still a first $300 million man. So that puts a lot of pressure on him just to outperform him from last season. You really can't do that. So he's feeling the pressure in St. Louis, no doubt. But that's a team, atop of their division with the Milwaukee Brewers and the Cincinnati Reds.
Everybody else sucks. Everybody seems like they're 25-20. They've got teams barely over 500. Milwaukee and Cincinnati are 2 above 500. And then Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, to me, is one of those teams that you never think is going to be in it, and they never are. So this year, just by them being a few games back, they're a surprise. And then there's the Cubs.
And then, you just talk about the Cubs. And there's really no great fantasy players on that team besides maybe a few pitchers here and there.
Santo. Well, the best thing the Cubs are going to do this whole year is they played in Fenway.
That's true.
It's over.
And they got swept. they got crushed. So,
what can you say?
But moving right along, we'll talk about the National League East. And this is a very, very intriguing division because there is a logjam at first place. You got, obviously, the hot Phillies, or high-flying Phillies, with one of the best pitching rotations ever in Major League Baseball. But then you look at the Florida Marlins, who, considering Hanley Ramirez hasn't done anything. He's been a major league disappointment. This team, is floating way above water and kind of trying to catch the Philadelphia Phillies napping one weekend, and they could be a top first place.
Well, the thing is too with Florida is they always reload with $200,000 a year players, and then those guys sit and play. They're hungry, and I think the wild card will come out of that division, and Atlanta's surprising, but Chipper's out, so they don't have their leader even though he's old. But Florida could very well be the wild card out of the National League. I think
we talk some hitters because Hanley Ramirez has not been doing well. Greg Dobbs has been playing a really good third base, sitting above 270.
Stanton.
Mike Stanton last year hit 15 home runs. He has 10 right now. He started out very slow, but now he's back up on a tear. And also, Gabby Sanchez, their first baseman. So that lineup can prove pretty powerful. And you look at also the top, Chris Coughlin really hasn't been getting it done. So look at those two guys, in Stanton and Gabby Sanchez, outfield and first base respectively. Those guys have been pacing the offense. But it's been all about the Phillies this season. They get Chase Utley back, who he hasn't been hitting that well. He's only played in two games.
Yeah.
But their pitching's true to form. I mean, Roy Halladay, what more can you say about Roy Halladay?
Well, and who was it they got rid of? The outfielder, not Worth.
Jason Worth.
Worth, yeah.
Well, look at him. Look what he's doing in Washington. I mean, he's doing terrible.
So much for the Nats. Nice pickup, guys.
Yeah. Well, they've only been around for what? This will now be their 8th season, 7th season in DC. Still got a ways to go.
That long?
I know. 2004.
Whoa.
Can you believe that? 2004. But anyways,
yeah, there's still one more games than the Skins have the last 2 years.
Well, that's true. They also play more games too. But let's talk about the Philadelphia Phillies though for just a second, because they've been real hot. Placido Polanco, guy that always consistently contends, hits above 300. He's been really stoking their offense while Chase Utley's been at bay, and also losing out on Jason Worth. But Shane Victorino's really picked up the slouch. And Raul Ibanez is kind of coming on strong. So this is a team we look forward to in the second half of the season. I mean, the first half is, almost complete. We're almost in, we're in end of May almost. I mean,
about 50 games.
You kind of know who's going to do well, who's not going to do well. Some of the guys that I think, Steve, that could be candidates for Cy Young or AL or NL MVP. Let's start in the American League. Jose Bautista.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But Bautista, and if the Yankees win and he keeps pace, it'd be funny to see Granderson.
I know.
But I also think Gonzalez of Boston, and that I think a lot of that's going to depend on who can win the division.
I think so too. But if the Yankees do, then Granderson Germain.
Granderson can be in there.
He's been
and
doing it all
Teixeira's
season long.
back hitting home runs. He's hitting 250, but I think Bautista's the obvious MVP from the first third of the season.
Oh, absolutely, hitting 19 home runs. I mean, no one saw it coming last season. He only hit 17 in Pittsburgh 3 years ago. Last season hits 54 home runs, and this season has 19.
This is his prove-it season, and he's doing it.
He's hit 3 games where he's had more than one home run. He has 1 3-run home run game, 3 home run game. So I mean, that's if I were to pick a guy, it had to be
right.
Jose Bautista, definitely for the Toronto Blue Jays. No matter even if they finish 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Right. Well, the National League MVP. First
League
third.
MVP.
That's tough.
See, the thing is, I would say Lance Berkman, but I just don't think he can continue this pace all season long.
Yeah.
I think it's another guy that we talk about. You should just sell. I mean, you're going to get high value for a guy you picked up in the 21st round of your draft. I mean, might as well sell this guy. Strike while he's hot. But another surprising guy, Steve, that you like in the National League for MVP.
Well, surprising. I think Kemp of the Dodgers is having a good year, but he's a Dodger. Don't ever say the word "like" and a Dodger to me in the same friggin' sentence. But the thing is, he's playing to get out of Dodge.
Yes.
No pun intended. But they're good players. They're going to lose if they're not careful. And it's sad the Dodgers situation couldn't happen to a better club. But he's even pulling 13 stolen bases, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know.
He's easily can to get 30-30 this season.
Oh yeah, he's hitting over 300. He's got the RBIs, 11 home runs.
And I would have said his counterpart Andre Ethier too, but he got injured and missed some time and had that kind of slump. Now he's back to 300 again. He was on a 24, 25 game hit streak. So you look at a guy like Matt Kemp, though, who's been really pacing their offense. But Lance Berkman's going to be tough to.
Well, Berkman will be on a winning team.
Right.
If you're dragging up from the rear, you're not going to win an MVP unless you have a big season, win a Triple Crown.
And I think another guy too. I just watched play today, Ryan Braun.
Yeah.
I mean, guy's a superstar. You look at him; his numbers are always consistent.
Hitting 300.
He's really pacing their offense. He can steal a base or two if need be. Ryan Braun.
He and Fielder can complement each other well too, so they can kind of cover up. And one guy has a good game. If they both have a good game, look out.
All right, so moving forward to the second half, what are some of the predictions that you see that you might, try to jump on here in the second half?
Roy Halladay's going to be good.
What about your boys? What about your boys on the West Coast? Talk about the Giants for a second.
The Giants for a second. If they can keep the pitching up, first off, they're in what I always think is a perennial weak division. Okay, so and even this year. So I think if they can keep the pitching up, but I think Colorado's going to be tough. You've got that ballpark that can do a lot of damage in if you're playing 81 games.
And plus, they have the best shortstop in I think all of the major leagues in Troy Tulowitzki.
You would say that because you drafted him 4 or whatever.
Hey, you know what? He's always been my favorite player. I mean, the guy plays defense. Guy can hit for power. He's always clutch. Gets the big hit when need be. So I like Tulowitzki to have a heck of a second half season, and maybe have him make a push for the National League MVP.
That's always possible. I think Bonds is going to get off on his drug charges. I mean, they reduced it to 1, so that's what I'm hoping for. He's still my favorite player.
Hey, you know what? I haven't talked about
I think they should bring him back. Forgive and forget, and see if they can get some runs.
We can't go one show without talking about Barry Bonds. He's been out of the league for 4 years.
Oh, man, he's the best.
He was the best.
Okay, well, what's his number for home runs?
I mean, you're never going to ever eclipse
Total.
73. Total it's over 700.
Yeah, but what's the number? We remember 714. We remember 755.
It's 773?
762, I think.
Oh, man.
And I could be wrong. See, that's what he did. He killed that number.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great point to make.
Well, yeah.
That's a great point to
if
make.
you're ever holding out making love, you always go Babe Ruth 714, Willie Mays 660, Frank Robinson 585. That's how you hold out, man. Remember those home runs.
Steve, I'll remember that next time for next show.
Hey, it works.
All right, well, switching gears. I mean, what are some of the teams that you like to finish the season strong in the American League?
I think you got a good point in Tampa Bay.
I like them
because they're always tough. I don't know who's going to come out of the West. Who do you think will come out of the West?
I like the Texas Rangers. I mean, I know that they caught a lot of crap in the last few weeks. Their pitching hasn't been that great. Their hitting hasn't been as timely as it was. They had Nelson Cruz back and Josh Hamilton back. But I like the Texas Rangers again. I know they made it to the World Series last season and lost to your Giants. But I like them. Who do you like in the National League real fast?
Philly. I mean, come on. Oh, no, you know what? I'll say Florida is going to be good in the playoffs.
I like that. That's a great prediction.
Wild card.
Well, for next time, we'll come back to that. For Steve Riddell, I'm Rob Castro. Thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Phil Harges, for directing our show today. And we will see you next time on Fantasy Sports Review.